Well, Stats Canada has released travel data between Canada and other countries for the month of July. CTV's Scott Hurst joins us now live with those details. Scott, good morning. Stats Canada releasing this data, numbers from June revealing U.S. residents made more trips to Canada than vice versa. What else do they say?
Hey, good morning, Beatrice. That trend is continuing in these latest numbers from Stats Canada, which now focus in on July. It appears to show Canadians are continuing to shun the U.S., but in the meantime, the balance of visitors has tipped the scale so that more U.S. visitors are coming into Canada. However, travel by Americans is also down. So let's break down these numbers a bit further that really point out the rift between the two countries as Canadians continue to avoid travel south of the border in large numbers. The number of Canadian trips returning home from the U.S. was down more than 32% from the previous summer. And breaking that down even further, trips by car, trips by air, of course, trips by car often much shorter for those of us who are close to the U.S. border, going across to shop or get gas. Those are down more than 35%, whereas trips by air also down by about 16%. Those are often longer vacations, particularly to further destinations that are south, maybe trips to get more sunshine. And overall, Canadian residents return from 3.6 million trips abroad, Beatrice, and that's the U.S. and other countries combined, and that was also down more than 24%. So it appears the rift between the two countries continues as Canadians continue to buck the trend and not travel en masse as we used to just last summer to the United States.
I imagine this has a lot to do with the ongoing trade war between Canada and the U.S. In what other ways, I guess, is traveling between the two countries impacting the data, Scott?
Yeah, we can point to a lot of reasons. Of course, the ongoing trade and tariff war and just the rhetoric we're hearing from the U.S. president, as we heard, particularly in the spring, really targeting our sovereignty, really making us the butt end of a joke often. And so Canadians didn't particularly like that and have decided to really keep their travel dollars north of the border. But that is, of course, having a big impact on many U.S. destinations, particularly the row of states that line the border with Canada, which greatly depend on Canadian travel. And I was able to track down some U.S. numbers, which for the most part line up with what we heard from Stats Canada. And this is what I got from the U.S. International Trade Administration, pointing out that for every 40 international visits, that supports about one U.S. job. And last year in 2024, the U.S. saw more than 20 million visits from Canadians, making Canada one of the top sources of international tourists to the United States. And that group said earlier this year those visits generated about $20 billion in spending from Canadians and supported more than 140,000 U.S. jobs. And so this rift is really having a big impact on the tourism industry, which, Beatrice, of course, we both know on both sides of the border is worth multi-billions of dollars in terms of what it means for the economies of these two countries.
Yeah, no question. I mean, just anecdotally, I was recently in the U.S. and the tour guide says, "Where are you from? Canada?" Yeah, we don't see a lot of you guys lately. Here's a testament. The proof is in the numbers, right?
There you go. Anecdotally, there's the trend, and the numbers seem to back it up from Statistics Canada.
CTV's Scott Hurst, thanks so much for this. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bea.